Around 10 p.m. on September 9th, 1975, a 24-year-old man named Roger Baldwin and his coworker, 29-year-old Peter Holmes, frantically crawled down a hallway towards the door of their apartment that was located 200 miles off the coast of Scotland underwater. It was connected to an offshore oil rig. If you're working on an oil rig down at depth, it's more efficient to construct these pressurized apartments underwater for their deep sea divers to live in, so that when they go out to the rig, they only have to go down to depth once until the end of their shift, whether it's weeks or months. At that moment, they were rushing down this metal tube hallway that led to their apartment because over the intercom communicated down to them that there was some sort of leak happening in the hallway. They go inside, they shut it, and they seal it. Roger and Peter, they can shut their door, but they can't fully seal it. The full seal comes when somebody on the surface, their supervisor, injects helium into their room, which then sucks the door fully sealed, and then they're safe. And eventually they hear it, and there's some creaking on the door, and it sounds very much like their door is fully sealed, and now they're safe. And so they think it's good for us to just take our stuff off and go to bed. Their supervisor up on the surface, a guy named Reed Arnold, he was sitting there looking at this big control panel. Apparently, the door to their apartment, it appeared like the door somehow did not fully seal, which meant there was a slow leak. He injected a little bit more helium, and he's watching the gauge of their room become even more pressurized, but the indicator that showed whether or not the door was sealed continued to show that it was not. He looked over at the monitor that was the live feed into the room. They both climb off their beds and they hustle over to the door and they start trying to open it. But from the feed, it seems very apparent that they can't get the door to open. And Reed's thinking to himself, that doesn't make any sense. I have this indication light that says the door isn't sealed. They go from frantically trying to open this door to almost in unison, stopping, turning around, walking over to their bunks, and then grabbing their mattresses, taking them off, and then Roger and Peter climbed on to their metal bed springs and began rolling around on the metal. Reed decides all he can do is just continue to put more helium into that room. That's when he realized he had made a terrible mistake. It would turn out Reed had misread the control panel. The controls were really trying to tell him that there's still a leak in the hallway right outside of their apartment. And so basically what Reed ended up doing by injecting more and more helium into the apartment where Roger and Peter were is he was creating a deadly pressure chamber. And the reason the men began acting the way they were is because the room was getting hotter and hotter. And eventually he boiled Roger and Peter alive. In the end, the supervisor, Reed, did not actually face any criminal charges because one, it was a genuine mistake, but two, the mistake was one that many people would have made. There was basically an issue with this control board, and so it really wasn't Reed being negligent, it was just a flaw in the control panel.